So, good evening, everyone from Istanbul and from Amsterdam. This is Kubra here, and Ömer is with me.
Hello.
So, welcome on board. Welcome to the first online evening of our second phase of our Dearest project Through the Window. I would like to start with thank you to all of you, to all of our supporters from the very beginning. And to keep it short, I would love to say, stay with solidarity and love. And I'm passing the mic to dearest Simone. Mwah. Simone. The mic is with you.
Yes. All right. I was still letting people in, which is a good sign. Hi. So thank you for being here with us, with Omar and Kubra and I and Club Coet. And we were gonna party after this conversation. But first, I really want to thank the speakers who have joined us. We're gonna be talking with Willy Rey and with Simone Zeefuik and Nina Kull and Ari Pulchuk. I'm writing that down in phonetic spelling because I'm already doing it wrong. Büyüktaş, Ari Büyüktaş. So we're going to be talking about university and activism. That would be our most logical theme at this moment, with everything that's happening at the moment in Istanbul and in Turkey at the Boğaziçi University. I'm also saying that wrong, for which I apologize. We're going to be talking about what's happening currently, and we're also going to be talking about the activism that's happening in the Netherlands for already decades, and also recently, much more visibly, the activism that's happening around decolonizing the university in the Netherlands, both the curriculum as well as the structures that shape university. So it's this LGBT uprise, it's the protests that are happening against current regimes, it's the protests that are happening against the educational systems that shape how we are supposed to think and which we are resisting against. And it's super, super nice to be here again. We hadn't expected to be already on our second iteration of Through the Window. And yeah, thank you so much for being here with us, because it's really you in this little window creating Through the Window. And yeah, thank you so much, because it allows us to support queer artists both in Turkey and in the Netherlands, and the speakers of tonight as well. Maybe I should say my name is Simone or Simon, and I'm moderating this night, at least up till the DJs, because of course the dancing I will shut up. And I want to invite you to think of any questions if you have. Like, we will start with introductions of everybody's practice, our four beautiful speakers, and then we will enter into conversation together. But if you have questions, collect them. Of course, if you want to disrupt, we never reject any kind of disruption. If it's in a loving mode. But otherwise we will get back to your questions at the end. So just know that we will be talking for a bit more than an hour, and then we will definitely ask you to enter the conversation. So if there's no questions already, just know that Kubra is gonna enter the bios of our speakers, because they're very long bios. And we will just enter those in the chat. So in case that you're missing a reference, or you just wanted to check where's she working, which university, then you can just check in the chat, which sometimes is easier than speech, and different contexts can also run those. Anyway, okay. Thank you for being here and welcome. And let's start with Willy Rey. Willy is a member of the LGBTI Studies Club at Boğaziçi University, and they're also a performer and many more things, which you will be able to read in the bio. And we will start talking about Willy's practice in relationship also to the current activism. But maybe to start off, Willy, do you want to share more of the timeline of the events that have been happening at Boğaziçi, why people are held in arrest, and what has been going on.
Okay, so let me check my sound first. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so if anything happens, you can just interrupt me, just in case, because I shut my door and Wi-Fi maybe is, maybe confused, or something like that. So um, I believe that we can talk chronologically about the recent events that happened in Boğaziçi University. Well, I actually prepared some photos to show you, and I'm going to show you why I sharing my screen. But first of all, let me talk about how this all began. Um, the very beginning of 2021, everyone's celebrating New Year, everyone's partying, students are cheering. We think that hopefully the COVID-19 will be over this year, which is, that aged not well. But yeah, so, and instantly everyone got the news about the appointed trustee rector, the second trustee rector. I had to, point that out because I'm going to go back to the first one. Melih Bulu, who is going to be basically our rector. We learned that news, and we are like, because of the time, we were like on Friday, we had to wait like 2 days, I believe, in the weekend to finally go out to the streets and basically protest it. So why do we protest it, if you may ask? Well, actually, everyone asked this question, even the students, because in Turkish government, in Turkey, everyone's appointed, everyone's appointed by one single signature, whether it's, administrative offices, government offices, ministries, etc., and also the universities. Boğaziçi is not the only single one. Other universities, other government universities are also have their rectors appointed. But, Boğaziçi University is known for its, liberal spirit. It's known for its, autonomy, autonomy and democracy intentions that we all share between each other, no matter what our beliefs, no matter what our, ideologies are. So we, along with the academicians and, other non-students, on the 4th of January 2021, we got to the streets. Not basic, but important campuses in our school, the North Campus and the South Campus. On January 4, we had our forum. It was like an open air forum. We basically sat and we talked about how we're gonna solve this problem, what we're gonna do. So in the North Campus, we did so, and I can actually share some photos with you about this. Hopefully this will work. I hope you can see that.
Yes.
So yeah, this was our forum. This was our forum. Many people. I think I'm somewhere here. I don't know. Yeah. So we had a forum, and right instant, when we wanted to go to the South Campus, our main campus, we were struck by police. They basically did not want us to enter the school, us, the students. So logically, think about it, students can't enter their own campus. We can, I'll share it again. I'll share some other picture, which is, tells everything basically about, that something is different, The first picture is quite, great, and the second picture is this. I was there myself, and at some point, they started to shoot plastic bullets. They started to shoot pepper gas and pressure water as well. And also they got, this iconic picture, iconic in very bad terms, I believe, of school gates being handcuffed. So basically, no entry. They say to us, there is no entry to school whatsoever. I'll share it again. I'm going to do that a bit, sorry, but I wanted to show you, yeah, this picture. This is what happened. Yeah, so up there, I was like dancing with the students. We actually had quite fun, protesting it, no matter what, because we're students and we finally got to see each other in this cabotage break. But on the next day, some house raids in the very morning, 5 a.m., I believe, happened to the houses of the students. And these house raids are not like, knock, knock, the police is here. They broke the doors and they basically entered, the students' houses to arrest them. One of the students was arrested, and he was I don't know actually the pronounce of the student. The student was Kurdish LGBTQI plus person, and this person said that they were threatened in the police office station during their arrest. They were threatened with rape. They were threatened with LGBTQI plus phobia, and also I forgot to do that, sorry. Whatever I'm going to talk about right now, this is basically a trigger warning to you, because we have everything. We have LGBTQIA plus phobia, we have police brutality, we have injustice, and so on. So if you're going to be, feeling any discomfort, just, tell it me and I may stop, So yeah. Then, Melih Bulu, the trust director, tried to connect with students, with media, trying to say that he's going to make Boğaziçi one of the top 100 universities in 4 years, that he's a very, he was also a student over there. He liked Metallica and so on. I don't know why he mentioned Metallica, but it became very unique in the way that we organized even as some kind of a Metallica concert as a resistance. Yeah. And also pro AKP government, the recent government person. He was a politician, and he was a politician in a very recent time. So we basically have a rector that is involved or was involved in politics at some point, and also looking for his PhD, we found out that it was full of plagiarism. It was like, I believe 80% or 60% of it was plagiarism. So me, myself, a literature student, I found it very unacceptable. So it is still argued, and we still talk about it, because we can't call that person professor, doctor, basically, on what we got so far. Yeah, and the academicians, we have their support. We are still protesting it every day. There is a vigil happening at at noon in the south campus of the school. So yeah, that was basically going up to 30th of January, when finally, because protests involved some people having their LGBT flags, rainbow flags, every kind of flags involved in the protests, it was at some point becoming very triggering to the politicians and the government itself. And at 14 January, the LGBTQIA plus Studies Club in our campus was raided as well. This raid was unlawful. There was no system, no bureaucratic system cannot accept such rate. And they found out some, evidences. One evidence was a Kurdish book, and because it was in Kurdish, they automatically decided that it is, an evidence of terrorism. The second is the rainbow flags. So they basically said that the evidence was the rainbow flags, the evidence of terrorism, the evidence of laws that they pass against us, which are basically the crime of inciting people to commit crimes and inciting the public to hatred and hostility, quote unquote. And this led to the closing of the club. They basically closed the club. The government obviously is, full of enemies to us, to me as members, of course, of this club. They say that we are deviants, that there are no such thing as lesbian, etc. They try to joke about it. They try to say that we violate the family, values, moralities, and so on. And basically, the club got closed by just one signature and during overnight, just like, the rector was appointed. So what happened next? The closing of the club was actually related to a peaceful protest, which was actually an exhibition, an art exhibition that happened in the campus. And what in the campus was there was this picture. I'm going to show it to you actually. Let me share it. Yeah. Okay, so this is the picture. This is the Great Kaaba, which is a very Muslim, very valuable Muslim sightseeing. This is a Shahmaran, a mythological creature there. And they're like the rainbow flags. You basically see rainbow flag, asexual, trans, and so on. So once they saw it, they automatically, the Muslim students of the campus, they decided that this is unacceptable, that this has to be, punished. The students that done this, they have to be punished. And so the lynch campaign began in Twitter, in social media. People, disclosed very private information of some students and some academicians as well that were like defending the students. So there was no area for us to basically discuss, is it acceptable or not? They did not decide to do like this form like this, that we have right now, or any kind of talk. They basically decided that these people have to be punished, they have to be arrested. So in this during this protest, many students, which are some of them are my friends, were arrested. And from my individual point, I have to say that this was basically a chaos, because we were having our finals week. We were like studying so very hard, and we were also trying to go to the protests and fight for our basic rights, fight for democracy, fight for autonomy in the university. And basically also we had our lesson hours, and one student was missing, or two students were missing. They were absent. Why? Because they were arrested. So we got to such point that we were always looking for news, always looking for names of who got arrested. We tried to, hold our hands tight when the police were coming towards us so that no one will get arrested. And, it got to very, point that we had like hundreds of students arrested. So over like 300 students so far were arrested. Yeah. What else can I say? Also, like the every campus has their own security, and even the security were trying to, disclose who were, on this protest. So they take your picture, or, they somehow learn your name, and they basically tell it to police or rector, I don't know, or tell this one, And during this time in March, after the 8th of March, actually, no, it was before, the Istanbul Convention, that Turkey left Istanbul Convention. So it got basically very quite related in the view that students were protesting both for the, Boğaziçi. They were protesting for Istanbul Convention. They were also protesting for the Canal Istanbul, that they were trying to build a canal. They basically tried to change the geography of Istanbul in this way. And also the very recent event that we were actually very proud of, that our school, our academy, had such a committee that was against sexual harassment. So basically the name is Sexual Harassment Prevention Committee. It was also closed by one signature of the same rector. So, what else can I show you? It's very, short video. I'll share it with you. So this was, this is photograph when, our club was closed, and everyone got there to show, the solidarity, the tolerance, and everything. All clubs became LGBTQIA plus clubs, with logos, changing their logos, and, showing all, love and solidarity to us. And, when the protests got very harsh, I'm going to show it the video. I hope you can see it. Yeah, I'm not going to show very much because this is very traumatizing. This is, basically non-human. So yeah, this try to use, and you can't be there. You're not allowed to be on the streets. They also try to say that you try to incite the, try to incite the public, try to sabotage, things. They also say that the rainbow symbol, any kind of colors, wearing a t-shirt, or having a flag, it's prohibited because it ignites the terrorism. So basically are terrorists, look at me, I'm a terrorist right now. They actually had a list that is, was saying that how can you see who is a terrorist and who is not? And they were saying that the vegans, the feminists, and the Boğaziçi University students are all terrorists. So basically the media controls each mind of the people in Turkey to try to say that we are wrong, that we are, basically trying to do something else other than fight for our democratic rights, and so on. So yeah, I try to summarize as much as possible. Actually, a lot of things happened, but yeah, thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you so much, Willy, for sharing this. I mean, even though this is not all, it already feels like a lot. And can I ask you, what are the strategies that people use to still protest but stay safe at the same time?
So, well, personally, I can, share. What I do right now, I'm doing drag. It became like a shield for me to, cover myself, go undercover, like, some secret agent. So no police, no other, stuff, kind of people would see and recognize me. So there's this problem of the identification. Also, we, all of the students right now are doing as much as possible to protect our, web data, internet data, because, on Twitter, if you have your like birthday or phone open, maybe, the police can, find you, by your phone number or by anything else. In fact, it happened, the Twitter administrator of Boğaziçi resistance page got arrested at some point. The photographers, the journalists, the list goes on and on. Yeah, and then we also use like this, Discord and what else? Telegram applications that are more private than WhatsApp and other things. Also, yeah, we basically try to always say to each other, like, what's up? Are you okay? This is the basic thing that we do to protect each other. We even have like this Zoom conversations going on during the nights when we like try to reach out to the news from advocate, from lawyers about other students arrested, and we like have the Zoom conversations where we try to lift each other's spirits up and basically talk, because when you just go to the media and you like, even if you're not there in the protests, but you see the media, you see what's happening, it becomes it's a spiraling pain. For me it was like that. Like when I learned that one of my trans friends was very violently harmed by the police, and that they were arrested, and I had no news about them. All I knew is that the name was there. I mean, that was for me like a shock. I was free. It was a freeze for me. My whole body got frozen. I cried. I even screamed. I tried to reach out to them, and there we have this COVID restrictions because during the nights we can't do anything. Fortunately, they got out. Yeah, everyone got out, by the way, because they can't lawfully, they can't do things like that. They can't do things like that. Yeah. So
yeah,
I think,
and
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you.
No,
it just made me realize, indeed, as you were saying, like talking about this notion of care, right? Like reaching out to each other. How are you doing? But it also made me think back of why Through the Window started, because we started because there's no club spaces to meet, right? No bar spaces. So I just wanted to ask you again, like, how are some ways to also meet each other safely in this COVID time, and also indeed like show care on a bodily level to each other, so that it's not just through Telegram or Signal, etc.
Well, I also I think I have to, give my kudos to the academicians who, did everything they could, and still do, in order to ease our, academic load, because sometimes, you can't just concentrate on anything, you can't just concentrate on readings and stuff like that. And during our final week, we couldn't cancel it, because if the academicians wanted to cancel it, they had to go to the rector to do so, and they wouldn't do so. So yeah, it was a very harsh time for us. We try to um, do it on social media. We sometimes do forums in the campus. We actually had recently we had a festival against trust director. There were like music, there were dances, people were great, having social distancing as well, having a social distance, and also like having fun in open air. Everyone show their support to LGBTQIA plus community, because this matter became even more important with Boğaziçi University events in Turkey. Um, and we always show that we will not give up. We actually, that became a hashtag in Twitter and everywhere. We do not accept, we do not give up. And we really do. And this is like, I believe this is like 105th day of our resistance, and we're still going to resist. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think maybe later we can talk also about what we can do, like as trans international feminists, trans queers, like how we can support also from a different context. And maybe also we can talk amongst each other also about the role of social media, if it feels important to the other speakers as well. I just wanted to mention as a housekeeping observation that or maybe I'm actually quoting a story now. I should say, as a household notification, is that we will make space for questions from audience, which is you, everyone. So to keep that in mind, if you want to ask a question, make sure that you come back to that. We really do want to bring you in. And this conversation is recorded. So if that's not okay with you, then just make sure that you switch off your camera. I wanted to ask you one more question, Billy, before we go to Simona. How do you, because you said a little bit about your art practice influencing, right, your protests, the drag being almost a veil or disguise. But what in your relationship to your academic work? Do you feel that your academic research enters your activism, and how does it mutually learn from each other?
Well, let me give you an example, a very recent example, because our spring term has started. And few of my professors before introducing themselves or everything, they said that please show me your pronouns, please write them down so I can refer to you. And this happened because I'm a student of Western Languages and Literature department, and we wrote a manifesto to our academicians to emphasize the fact that LGBTQIA plus phobia does not necessarily go just through the political environment. It goes also for our linguistic environment, for our social environment, and that also the fact that the campus is not just about going to classes and going home. It's not just about that. It also has a community, and there are a lot of people that we have to protect. And even pronounce such a basic thing, it's a very big act of dignity towards people, everyone actually. Yeah, and we always discuss this. I actually let me share it with you. Because of this event, I had to come out to my mom as a trans person, and it went well. So even such bad things happen, we still have some things that we learn from this, from our resistance, and build upon. So because Boğaziçi University, just like that, we learn from very worst things, but we keep each other up, so yeah. My academic life is very integrated right now with what I do as a performance activism, and I hope that in future I'll do more with that personally.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And we will make the links between everybody's different practices, because we are now going to switch to Simone Zeefuik, who is based in Amsterdam in the Bijlmer. And she is, among other things, a cultural programmer, also a podcast host, Project Diaspora. And you can read her bio also in the chat. So you can find her podcast. She's known because of Decolonize the Museum, among, again, other things. And we invited her especially tonight because of creating a new master's program called Blackness. And I think I should just give the floor to you, Simone. Hello. And ask you, hello. And ask you why you have created this course, what is it about?
Well, first I want to say a big thank you to you all for inviting me to speak, and Willie Ray for this very heartfelt talk. And it for me was a new. I read something about it, but not enough. And so thank you for this very beautiful statement about what's happening, and for all your work, and for looking fantastic with the cocked hair. I love it. Yay! So I created the master basically because we've been doing a lot of work, me and a lot of others. So this is a collective effort to create more attention for anti-Blackness. For anti-Blackness, but mostly also the way that Black people, predominantly like Afro-Caribbean people and people from the continent, are being portrayed in various exhibitions, films, etc. And Sandberg Institute, which is like a master's course of an art and design academy, they had a call for a new program. And I felt that specifically with everything we're going through, the focus is mostly on protest and mostly on survival. And I felt that I wanted to create something that was centered around joy and imagination. Because I feel like there has to be a space for critique. But when you're critiquing something for a very long time, you also want a space where you can talk about what it is that you would like to see. So what would you do better if you would have the key to whatever building that you could run? So the program is for 2 semesters, and it basically focuses on, like I said, imagination. So what are the questions that you would ask if you would center not only Black people as objects, but also as the audience? Because I feel like a lot of the exhibitions are focused around, oh, we're going to explain Black people to people who aren't Black. But you never explain Black people, for example, from the Caribbean to Black people from West Africa, or people from Central Africa. Like, what are the conversations we're having? If I don't have to call a Haitian writer, let's say, if I don't have to compare that writer to a European writer, but maybe I want to compare that writer to a Ghanaian writer or a writer from Sudan or from Somalia. And I feel like these are conversations that we're not really having enough in the Netherlands. And I remember you had this exhibition about freed and enslaved Black people who lived in Amsterdam in the 16th and 17th century. So a lot of work has been done around their prisons, work by Jennifer Dodge and Mark Ponde. But the exhibition mostly centered around the question, how did white people feel to see Black people in that century? Was there racism? And my question I would have asked is, but how did the people, for example, communicate with each other? And how did they influence the language of 17th century Amsterdam? So I live in Bijlmer, which is an historically Black neighborhood in Amsterdam. And the sound in my neighborhood, just the sonic presence of Blackness is different than, for example, in the west of Amsterdam. So if you have people coming in from, for example, Mozambique, countries you now know as Mozambique and Angola and the Caribbean, like what does that sound like in that neighborhood? And also, what are the differences between people, for example, who came in the 16th century as freed Black people and people who arrived at a later point? Like, what was the dynamic between these communities? So for me, that's more interesting than asking, like, how did the white people respond to them? And I feel like if you have true interest in cultures and communities, you ask questions that really they come from within, instead of asking a question as a spectator. So they're basically 4 semesters centered around not wanting to explain yourself anymore, and wanting to be free in your imagination. So for example, I often ask people when I give, for example, writing workshop or we have a talk, I ask them, like, what kind of movie would you make? I always call it like Black Panther budget. So you have all the money in the world. What kind of film would you make? And people come up with these like revolutionary ideas and fighters, and everything is like Black Panther, the sequel. And very few people come up with it. Like, I just want a basic love story. I just want Bridget Jones's Diary, but with Black folks. Like, it's about nothing. It's about somebody falling in love. Nobody's dying. Nothing is happening. There's no violence. You know what I mean? So, for example, you have this beautiful film, I think it's called Rafiki, by Wanura Kayu, somebody who I really, really appreciate and love. And somebody said, I wish somebody else made a film about a Black queer couple and nobody gets hurt in the film, right? The film is about them falling in love, going to the supermarket, somebody buys a donut, the other person buys a bagel, they sit in a park, and that's the story. And I feel like a lot of us, we don't have these moments of lightness, moments where you don't have to struggle for your survival, moments where you don't have to explain yourself. So I'm looking at, because I'm trying to like upgrade my French again. So I'm watching a lot of French film. Don't ask me how it's going, but I think it's kind of okay. And you see these stories where, because you had this movement in France where they said, Blackness is not my profession. So you have these movements that people say, like, I want to tell a different kind of story. Like, I don't want to be the Congolese family constantly having to explain my Congoleseness because otherwise people couldn't locate me. Maybe you just want to be a regular family. You want to be a regular family eating your food without saying, oh, let me put this Congolese dish on the table. Oh, let me put on some Congolese music, and constantly having to explain yourself. So it's basically about imagination and about bringing to the table what you would like to create and make if nobody else who isn't part of your community would check your subsidy boxes, for example. I think I'm not sure how it is in Turkey, but in the Netherlands, you apply for money and then you have to tell the people how you spend the money. And these are often people that don't understand your culture. So you water down your product to make it understandable for the people who finance it. And I feel like that's a very big problem. And it gives us a specific kind of product that I, for example, am very, very tired of. So it's basically about joy and imagination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I realize I'm on mute, so every time I'm like, you don't hear this.
But I felt your.
But yeah, no, I mean, if you're saying watering down, like this is also, I guess, why the title of the course is Blackness, right? Like refusal to water down. I was thinking, because also of you describing sound, like how are you approaching methodological like research on a research level? Like how are you approaching the difficulties of not having the normative archive, right? Like in terms of, for example, if you're talking about the 17th and 16th century of enslaved and free Black people in the Netherlands, and then the focus becoming on whiteness, because the archives that are being accessed are written archives instead of, for example, sound archives, where how do you document sound, right? So how are you approaching that? Is that a question in this course specific? I know it's like a question in other work, but
yeah, what we're going to do with the course is push that aside, because I think what's happening often is people say, if it's not archived, it cannot be true. And we're like, but we know why you haven't archived it. If I would now look for queer communities, 16th century Amsterdam, I probably would not find, I would maybe find one picture at the most, or one quote. And then somebody would say, see, there were no queer communities in Amsterdam. I'm like, you know what? You know why you didn't archive this. So we're gonna imagine it with the knowledge that we have today, and then see like, okay, how would the people gather, or what kind of conversations would they have? Like looking at what you have documented. So we're basically filling in the blanks, and that comes from the work, for example, of Toni Morrison, who I greatly appreciate. She had this beautiful essay in her book, Mouthful of Blood, where she talks about like, I do not have access to the interior lives of people because that wasn't documented. So I have to imagine what the people were going through. So we're going to basically start with saying, this is not a fact because it's not documented. For example, people's names aren't documented often. And then what do people say? People say, oh, nobody knew their name, but people knew their name. They had somebody gave them their name. They had friends who called their names. What you're trying to say is we didn't find it important enough to document, and that's something else. So what we're saying is we do find it important enough. It should have been documented, but it's not. So we're now going to imagine what it could have been like. And that's going to be the starting point, instead of saying, oh, we might not have been there, because we know we were there.
Yeah, if thinking about imagination also, like, I know that you've also worked with undocumented people in the Netherlands who might have different access to education, But I don't want to ask the critical question because we're talking about imagination. So how would you imagine a future educational platform that would suit your imaginations of the future?
Specifically with regards to people who are illegalized and who don't have documents?
No, just in regards of education. What would it look like if we have this decolonized university? Maybe we don't even call it university anymore, right? And
I think for me, what would be important is that we center our education around teams instead of around these historical landmarks that are often rooted in colonialism. So we use as a starting point the moment that the Dutch started colonizing, or we use as a starting point the enslavement of people. Why don't we start before? And why don't we start in an era where, for example, countries still had either their original names, or we use the names of the regions, for example. So really questioning, like, what is it that we accept as facts? And how come that when we learn, for example, about geography, we see all kinds of Black and brown people. But when we learn about math, we only see white people, right? So what do we learn about certain parts of the world that we want to dismiss and marginalize when they were centers of the world, basically? I don't remember learning anything, for example, about I don't know, Sri Lanka in school. Because where would Sri Lanka fit in the Dutch curriculum? Wouldn't be, maybe it's not interesting enough for economy, maybe nothing for biology. So it doesn't fit any of that molds. But if you look at the history of a country like Sri Lanka, it could be featured everywhere, basically. So centering it about teams, or maybe centering it about, I'm now teaching an art class for different students, and I tell them, what are communities or regions that you would link together based on their history or activism? And it's very difficult for them to think outside of the boxes of saying, this is a specific art movement, or this is like contemporary art and everything looks Western European. I'm like, okay, but what would happen if you would compare Southeast Asian art to Southern East African art? Do you see comparisons? And if so, what would you call these comparisons? What would be a different name for that category? So thinking outside of the boxes of saying, this is geography, so we're now going to look at poor countries. And we're going to be like, oh, this is too bad. Switch back to Europe, which got rich, and we don't know how because we are such good economists. You know what I mean? So adding different perspectives in the mix, I think for me that would be crucial. You want to have a Dutch class where you have a literary list, and you have different diasporas featured on that list, because you have different communities now speaking Dutch. You have no Turkish Dutch writers, you have no Surinamese Dutch writers on these lists because they're filled with like white Dutch people. And that's definitely something I would change, because that also does something to the imagination of young children who never see themselves represented and who really have to go look for it. So imagine growing up and always thinking there's nobody like me here. How lonely must that have been? Instead of when you would have gone to school and you would have been like, oh, wait a minute, this person looks like me, talk like me, listen to the kind of music I like. I'm a Black person, but I like rock. I'm not an anomaly. Oh, there's another. You know what I mean? So when you learn different things about your history, you feel that you're part of a community that's bigger than just you in your room, hoping to one day find friends who are the same as you. And I think, yeah, a lot of us, not so much in this room, but I think a lot of teachers underestimate the impact of loneliness. And I think a lot of curriculums, they make people feel lonely and unloved. And I think that's a very sad reality. And it's difficult to find joy if you are in a constant survival mode. And that wears you out at one point.
I'm just dreaming that there will be a collaboration also with you and Willy and like starting a new university. I mean,
that would be amazing. Yeah. I want to collaborate with Willy on everything.
I'm studying film studies certificate program right now, so
Nice.
I mean, just one more institutional question maybe before we go out to Ari. I was just thinking, because you said, like, I don't know how it is in Turkey, but if you apply for funding, you have to water down whoever you are and whatever you want to teach to get funding. And it just kind of made me think of like the lack of funding, as I hear often from people in Turkey. So I was just thinking about the Dutch context specifically, and also how I sometimes imagine it almost as a Stockholm syndrome, where there's a lot of, at least on the as a sort of window dressing, there's a lot of funding, right? There's a lot of funding you could potentially access, which also creates this idea that there's nowhere outside of an institution. And since your master's course is part of Sandberg, which is an art academy in the Netherlands, I was just wondering how you relate to existing institutions, and if you could share maybe strategies in terms of how you use, if that's the right word, or collaborate with existing institutions, while at the same time maybe continuously keeping an eye outside of that.
I think I'm in a privileged position, or I have created. Let me give a little bit of credit. If you come in as an outsider, I think it's easier. So it's easier for me to come in, critique and do what I like to do, because I'm invited based on work that I've done. I'm not sure how it would be if you're already in the institution and then you say, hey, I want to create something else, and you have to risk your job, your livelihood, and that's something not all of us can afford. And I feel like a lot of us are too strict for people who work somewhere and who don't want to give up everything to join the fight, because you don't know people's life. You don't know how people need housing, people need food. But I feel like if you can create something outside of the institution that perhaps catches the attention of the institution, you are getting invited in on much different conditions, because they already know what they signed up for, so to say. So I don't think anybody would say, oh, Simone, would you like to do something for our school? And then like, oh my God, why should we focus on Blackness? Because they would know. But I feel like if I would have come in as another kind of teacher, and then I would have switched up my program, that would have been difficult. So I feel always, and even if you only have maybe a half hour a week, try to make something that is authentically yours. And that whenever people see it, they're like, oh, this is Kubra. Oh, this is Willy Ray. This is their work. So when they invite you in, nobody could say like, come on in, but we want you to do this, but leave the rest behind. Because then you can be like, but this is what I do. And even if I don't think any platform is small enough for people to join. So start working on what you find important. I think that's my strategy. Do what you find important and see if it somehow can bring you joy, so that you can last a little bit longer doing the work that you do. And find something that you don't have to compensate in. Something. And like I said, even if that's only 30 minutes a week, find that one space where you can say, you know what, this is strictly for me. I'm not making any concessions. This is how I want to show up. This is how I'm dressed. This is how I'm talking. This is my platform. And it will go where you envision it also to go. And I feel like that's my strategy. Do something, because you see a lot of people, especially in the Netherlands, they have like a lot of Instagram followers, and they get on all these kind of programs. And I always wonder, like, but is this really what makes you happy? Like at the end of the day, you're now 70 and a young person runs up to you and they're like, hey, aren't you? And if they tell you your work, wouldn't you be a little bit embarrassed? Even though you made money 50 years ago, like, wouldn't you be like, oh, snap? So make something, even if it's smaller, make something that even after 40 years, you look back and you're like, you know what, I did this. Maybe 20 people showed up, maybe 2 people showed up. But the folks that showed up, we loved it. We had fun. We made a difference to ourselves. And yeah, that's my strategy. Yeah. Joy and pride and togetherness.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to note that there's 57 people, not even 2. So here we are.
See, there you go.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Let's come back to that.
Cool, let's do it.
Yeah. Ari Büyüktaş, welcome to the floor.
Hello.
Hello. So Ari is...
Do you want to pronounce my last name again?
Correct. Büyüktaş. I cannot, yeah, better,
Perfect.
yeah. You are a PhD researcher, a podcast host, a translator, and a barber. Well, this is actually not your haircut, but I did get my haircut by you, which was quite amazing. I can recommend. Ari,
All right.
as you were cutting my hair, thank you for being here. And you're based in Istanbul, I should say. You're actually locked inside the house at the moment, quarantining. When you were cutting my hair, I remember that you told me that you had carved for yourself a special position, in a sense that you are researching queer culture and art in the contemporary moment in Turkey. And why did you say that you have carved a special position in terms of your research position and the freedom that you have?
Well, it's quite complicated. I mean, I see myself like that. I see myself as independent, but it doesn't mean that I am totally independent. Of course, I'm within the academia. I'm doing my PhD in a conventional way, but I'm not an academic, first of all, and it's by choice. But before getting to that, maybe I should explain why I chose that way. Because before starting my PhD, I had to wait for like around 5 years. It's because of my subject, first of all. And also, I wasn't sure if I was going to do it in Turkey, if I wanted to do it in Turkey. But in the end, I made my decision. And my relationship with academia as an activist, because I'm in the activist area, like circles, like more than 10 years now. And my relationship with academia is also, I can call it like an activist relationship. Because I never felt the belonging in academia, and I still don't feel belong. I don't feel like it. And this feeling is not just, I'm not saying I don't feel like it in a regular way. This feeling is the experience, it's the truth, it's my reality. And I know that many people who have similar experiences with me have this feeling. So this feeling is just something that we can call ourselves like why we feel outside of academia. And someone was just mentioning that being an outsider and all. I always feel like an outsider, and there are so many reasons to that, and maybe we cannot cover all of them, but as of today, I can say that my relationship is very complicated with academia. And the question for me is that, like, as an activist, I do fight for my rights. I do fight for my community. And this community is very large, but still we are considered as minorities. So this is all very conflictual. And still I have this question, why do we need to fight for academia? Like, why do I need academia? I'm a researcher, I can do certain things. I need funding for sure to earn my living, but why academia? Why do we choose to be in academia if it's so, excuse my language, if it's so fucked up? But we're still here. I'm still there. I'm doing my research, and it's by choice. So my being, me as a trans person working on these subjects, on queer culture, on contemporary art, being in the academia, doing my PhD in Turkey is an activist move. I see myself like that, and I'm not the only one. There are so many people all around the world doing this, and even if they don't call it as an activist move, I think it's activism itself. Yeah, that was my first question in mind when I was applying for a PhD. Why do I need that? And I always ask this, like, as an activist, why do I fight for this? Because there are so many things happening, and really perfectly explained how things go in Turkey right now. And thank you again, because being an activist is also, but it requires these explanations, these like experience sharing, and it's not easy. So thank you again. Like, as a person living here and experiencing this, all these happening around me, talking about them, sharing them is never easy, but at the same time, it's too much. It's a burden. So yeah, and thinking all the things that surround us is it's in itself so precious, I could say. Well, I want to talk about something else as well, but maybe we can continue with your questions or comments.
I'm totally up going with your lead. What did you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, maybe as I said, like being in academia itself could be considered as activism, but it's just too optimistic in my way of living, because I don't totally believe in that. Maybe I can ask a question, I can comment for people who are listening to these talks and who are interested in this topic. For me, academia, I can just make an, like, it could be a super simple metaphor, but I want to do it anyways. It can be considered as a painting, I could say, like on a canvas, like it was a blank canvas and some people painted something on it. And we see that, we know it, we understand what we see. This is, I don't want to say things like system and structure, so I say painting, just to make it a bit like soft. So this painting is in itself, it has its own reference. So when we see that painting, you just imagine that. When you see that painting, you know what it is. You know what the meaning is. You know what it tells to other people as well. But like when we create those like holes on it, whether by some certain courses, by some professors, by some students, by some clubs, by some activists, by just being there like me, we just create some holes on it, but the painting is still there. So then I see it like, well, the image is now a bit distorted, but it's still there. It's changing. The meaning is a bit changing, but it's still there. And I say holes because like I'm very inspired by what Simon was talking, like by those holes on that canvas, we find ourselves some spaces to breathe. There's some air flowing. So, but the painting is still there. This is why I say I'm not super optimistic, because I don't want to see that painting anymore. I want to see something else. I want to create something else. Because it's not a surprise, but that painting was made by some cis heterosexual white man. The academia is built by them. Even if we create some holes on it, even if we punch it in the middle and create a big hole on it, it's still there. And I just want to burn the whole thing down. I want to burn the canvas.
If we take up then Simone's quest, right, like to imagine what would you create? Not to put the burden on you, but just to like have that space of imagination be present with us.
Yeah, first of all, I want to burn this, but then we can create something else. Maybe it doesn't have to be something singular. We can create many things. Because in my point of view, what academia is, it's about knowledge. It's about, well, they say producing, but I want write papers. You need to research. You have to do that. It's an obligation, and it's a surplus. Like there are so many things. There are so many papers and articles and books, and nobody reads them because it's an obligation. You have to do it, and some of them are read, and it's also about the power relationships. You know, some powerful people have the capacity and the opportunity to be read, to be referenced. You have to do the reference to them, and the rest of it is just obligation. So is this knowledge? We need to ask that as well. My research, who's going to read it? Who's going to use it in their academic or artistic way? I don't know, but some of them are just they just turned into garbage, and that's so, I can say in my imagination, these obligations are just to be lifted out. We just need to abolish the whole academic system so that we can actually create, we can actually do the research, we can actually contact each other and do together these collaborations and everything. And it's not just something that I found myself, it's the queer feminist way of sharing knowledge.
Would you say though that in relation to that, like I'm also thinking about how this question of what it means to study, not just simply in like to study within the university, but this whole idea or this act or attitude of studying in itself as a colonial project. Then I'm just thinking about like how I introduce you as somebody who researches queer art and culture. Then I wonder like how is this, like this question of visibility also comes in, right? Do you make legible art and culture that should not be like to whom, to which reader, to which listener? How are you navigating that question, like in regards of visibility and legibility, and not creating a stage for authorities actually to plunder?
Actually, there was this conversation I had with a colleague like 4 years ago, because I was always using queer theory as a methodology or in the middle of all my work. But like nowadays people think like, wow, queer, it's like super hot, cool, sexy. No, it's not like that. And if it's seen like that, then it's like colonial and abusive gaze, I could say. Because when I work on queer history and artistic history or political history, I see discrimination, exclusion, and history of abuse and all that stuff. I don't want to mention all of them, but you understand what I mean. So maybe it's a sexy topic for certain people, but if it's seen like that, then there's a problem. And I'm fighting against that problem as well, because like how to explain it in a nicer way, I don't know, but I had all those fights with so many institutions and professors in various platforms. Like I'm not doing it to earn credit for people who are within or outside academia, to make them accessible, those texts. And after so many years, I can see that it made a change. And it's really like, I feel very hopeful for the future as well, because now people do their own translations, do the copyleft sharing, and that's the ideal way for me as well. But for certain reasons, it's not the only way. And so when we have the tools, we can create something else, we can create more. And I just want to do whatever I can. Like I can translate text, then I can do that. I can do the editing, I will do that. And now I want to take a step further, and this will be the first time that I'm going to share it publicly. So it's been like 2 years now. I've been planning this, but I'm going to open this publishing house, an independent small publishing house in Turkey, which will focus on queer texts, especially queer texts. But by queer, what we understand, it can change. But like, so it's going to happen hopefully this year, and I hope this will be just another way to create and share knowledge among us. And yeah, that's the news.
Woo! We should do a collective woo. Thank you so much. We'll be waiting, the chat says. Do you have a name? Did you say the name already of the publishing house?
Not yet.
Okay.
There's a name, but I'm not going to say it now.
We'll be meeting again for the premiere of that. Thank you so much, Adi, and we'll be coming back. Nina Köhl, come on in.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
You are a junior assistant professor, to give you the official title, at the University College Utrecht. You also write. You have published an essay in De Goede Immigrant, which means The Good Immigrant, a book that was published by Dipsaus. It's all going to be in the chat if you want to look up the references. And you are the co-creator of the diversity committee of the University College Utrecht. And tell us about that. I know it's a bottom up, so it's like started with different staff members. It's not something that was started by the university itself. Is that correct?
Right. And as you said in an email to me, for lack of a better word, right? Because language is fraud. And I often say that also about, you know, because people ask me, why don't you call it decolonizing? And I say, these are all buzzwords and they're becoming more and more sort of empty signifiers, you know, also queering as well and decolonizing. Everybody's doing it now and jumping on the train. But I think it's very important then to also make sure that you define it in a way that it doesn't get depoliticized, because that's the danger, that these terms get depoliticized yeah, they work against actual social justice and radical equality. But I think before I start and talking about the diversity committee, I want to thank Simone, Kubra, and Ömer for inviting me. And I'm sincerely honored to be in such great company of Ari, Simone, and Willy Ray. And as Simone van Saarloos knows, I actually have a personal relationship with Turkey. I have family there. My father is Turkish, and I've been following Boğaziçi, the struggle at Boğaziçi for weeks, and even all the struggles predating Boğaziçi, because I mean, the LGBTQ, it didn't start now. It predates the AKP and police brutality, as Willy Ray said. I mean, so a lot of solidarity and love from Amsterdam. I'm in awe of what you do. And it's also important to me to emphasize that I do not presume that my struggle matches yours or even is fraught with the same risks as yours in Turkey, but also for Simone as a Black woman intellectual in the Netherlands. So then back to your answer. Yeah, so I've been working in academia for 10 years, and I was working outside of academia and in arts and culture, even in journalism and film production. And I recognize a lot of the frustrations of Ari. And I've asked myself a lot of times, why am I still in this, right? but I left journalism, I left art, I left, you know, so those are all of these fields also have become institutionalized. They're also fraught with racism. They're also fraught with transphobia, ableism, sexism, all of these structures. So where do I go? Yes, we have to create our own spaces. This is then often the answer. And I think that's very, very important that we do also create our own spaces. And I personally see myself as somebody who's both working within university and institution. And also I very much also intersect with communities outside of the university, as I believe all of us do, right? And that is where, not only where my practice of care is mostly situated, but also I think there's also important knowledge that is being cultivated outside of the university. I don't think that university nor an art academy is the only place where knowledge is cultivated. And I think that we have to acknowledge that, and I think institutions have to should do a better job at acknowledging that. But I think you might want to know more about what we did, right? So why am I here? So the diversity committee, we call it diversity committee. We formed with bottom up with two colleagues, Marca Valenta and Agnes Andeweg. We formed in November 2019. And yes, it's bottom up. It's because you picked up on that immediately. Not a lot of people do. And I always it's my narrative, it's bottom up. And the reason why I stress that is because I do have experience in another diversity committee, and that was top down, and it differed quite a lot. Before, like in preparation for this talk, I was thinking like how was it different? Well, we all have embodied experience, embodied knowledge of various forms of discrimination. And we also have been scholarly engaging with critical race theory, with queer theory for many years. So we didn't just start like, oh, Black Lives Matter, for example, happened last year. Let's start a diversity committee. We've been engaging with it for decades. And so that is important. It's not just a quick fix, as I think a lot of these initiatives within institutions sometimes are. Okay, they are never, institutions by definition don't lead the fight. At best, they respond to it. So there are social forces outside of university, outside of institutions, actually, cultural forces, political forces, and all of that. So like 25 years ago, and I had these professors and they did shape my thinking. And this is also, I mean, the question that Ari raised about why am I in this, right? I don't believe like we can create radical change. We will radically change the institution. I think we can create some holes, and maybe in the long run, more and more holes will be created. And then at the end, the painting will change. It will look different. And I'm always thinking about, women in academia, women at universities, 100 years ago and now, depending on where you are, of course. And we can definitely still do a lot better. And there's still a lot of sexism and glass ceilings, but it has changed compared to 100 years ago, I'd say. So I think that's why I'm still in it, and I don't know where else to go.
And when you would think about those holes, could you describe like maybe one or two of them? where you're already getting towards a whole with the diversity committee at University College Utrecht?
Yeah, and I don't think it's only us as a committee. I think, again, we need to acknowledge the outside forces and generational change, but because we very much see and observe younger generations applying to college in their application. I would say there are two pillars: climate emergency and decolonizing. So that there's this the narratives change as well, even in the applications, at least our institution. Maybe that's singular, anecdotal, I don't know if that's structural. But we do see, I mean, we also see it in the demonstrations, Black Lives Matter protests, not just in the US, but also in Europe. They're quite heterogeneous, more so than in previous decades and years, it's comparable protests. So I think there's a younger generation, and the younger generation is also putting pressure on the institutions. And that is also my hope. And your question is, yes, so it's not just us, the diversity committee. I don't want all of that, the honor by myself, but together with these outside forces, what we do is we're trying to create a different language. We're organizing workshops, how to decolonize the curriculum. Very concrete, there's a workshop next week, an anti-racist curriculum, inclusive pedagogy in class. This is like we have 2 workshops per month, and we started in November. What we also do, there was a new strategic plan, policy plan that was just produced in 2020 in the year of Black Lives Matter, and that I suspect that did play a role. I would just claim that this played a role. And decolonizing now is a major chapter, a major paragraph in that strategic plan, the policy plan. So, for example, there are now calls for courses asking specifically to incorporate, to decolonize the curriculum. But again, as Ari said, I mean, at the end of the day, the university is still an institution, and not only is the university institution, the diversity committee is still part of that institution, and I'm painfully aware of that.
Yeah. Sorry. So. No, I mean, it made me think of a question I would maybe around affect and feeling, and like also returning to the imagination in relationship to Simone's course. Before I ask you the question, I would just say that Simone, Billy Ray, Ari, get ready to start mingling. We have 10 minutes extra secretly. Kubra knows. Every time I said, no, we don't need more time. And Kubra just says, yes, you do. Well, she's always right. But Nina, I was thinking because of what you were saying at the last, right? This idea that the chapter of decolonize becomes part of a policy, which is, of course, immediately sort of a trigger for us to get skeptical. And then also I'm thinking back of that you hosted the first Black Lives Matter roundtable, also in Utrecht, and
I think if you do this type of work and you're really committed, you constantly navigate between what we could call conversing with people who don't use the same vocabulary even. So you also need to for example, we're communicating here. But at the same time, there's also resistance, very strong resistance. People who call you polemic, people call you politicizing, people who call you, an activist, this space. And how do I live with that? By still thinking, like, at the end of the day, history, and I look back at history and I think institutions also need to change. We can't just bring about change outside of institutions. They do have so much power in society. You just have power, and therefore it is important that institutions change as well. So I do see a role in this for me, and practices of care. I by intersecting with communities outside, these are my practices of care, if that's what you're asking. And also, I mean, but there are also people inside of academia who it's not a solitary endeavor, and that is very important. And I think also in response, there's also what I hear a lot of colleagues who do the kind of work that I do say is, the students give me hope. Oh, this is one of the mantras. Yeah. Does that answer your question or give you some ideas?
Going to be soon dancing, which also always helps. But to open it up, and thank you so much, Nina, to open it up maybe and to draw back also to the beginning of the night. I just wanted to ask, really, they shared the recent events happening. What would you, hearing of course the different practices, what would be something that on a transnational level we support, but also in a mutual sense, right? Like vice versa, supporting, just to start that conversation between the four of us. And then if questions come, please put them in the chat or shout and come.
Well, you know, if any of you got by any accident, a European Union citizenship as a serious inquiry, hit me up. But on a serious level, you know, when the COVID outbreak started, you know, some courses in Harvard and Oxford, as far as I believe, went online for other students, you know, all around the world, even not students, you know. And this very sparked, you know, something say that, you know, they don't want it, or they don't, you know, find it useful, created in a safe space, that we won't attack each other, that we won't, you know, humiliate each other or criticize each other individually, but we would criticize or argue our ideas or our ideologies, beliefs, whatever that is. So I believe that, you know, on a transnational level, we already have this conversation going, but we really need, in terms of Boğaziçi, I'm just speaking in terms of Boğaziçi, we need to keep the conversation going, because the media right now, our recent, level of media in Turkey and worldwide, they control and operate the news. They control what they want us to hear, or what they won't let us hear. So I think that in every level, every possible level, in academy, in the streets, casual talk, Tinder date talk, we have to talk about it. We have to talk about the problems that do not necessarily we do not necessarily possess. I mean, I can talk about your problems and you can talk about mine. And, Nina said something that I was really thinking about for lots of, months, actually, what we are doing, what we are doing by just talking and writing papers, but on a retrospective and long-term level, we do things like, people can do hard things. I'm going to quote my artists here. People can do hard things, and these hard things are, something that, you say, what else can I do? Automatically, when you say, what else can I do? You have one chance to do something a little bit better, a little bit forward. It's always like that. It never fails you, this logic. Whenever you feel like you can do anything, do little, baby steps. So whatever you find the definition of baby steps in
Okay, I find this get together very, very moving. Ideas about intersecting with communities outside academia / activism, halls, and in thinking through what you all brought to the table, I'm speaking from a person with an identity of CODA, children of deaf adults. That's the category. And I can see many potentials in that, in the sense that I have this self-association or society's association with the metaphor bridge, like connecting the hearing world to the deaf world and vice versa. And through that identity, I can see how intersectionality works. I mean, I have cis hetero identity for myself, but I can see how people who feel they belong to the disability community also belong to LGBTIQA community. I can form alliances with, let's say, community of autistics, who majority of whom are feeling confident in signing rather than speaking. So actually, I realized that when I came out with my CODA identity in Twitter, if I'm allowed to use the word come out in that sense, all the things just emerged spontaneously. Like I found myself in click with many people who come from disability community. And we are, although the ideas are very uncooked, cooking in the making, we think of coming with a platform that that is determined to create more halls, to extend from Ari's metaphor, but also try to find voice in those holes that are already, formed and evolving and expanding and challenging, if you will, first trial in public space to look at, to express. There is a potential from this standpoint of identities that could be very powerful in, let's say, revolutionizing this ableist world, that we could form alliance in that sense, because ableism also has many intersecting points, right? Ableism, and the idea of, how they use the idea of charity, in that sense, how that can be misused. Oh, they are also, creature of gods, I'm sure you heard of this, in many contexts. I was just wanted to just leave with one point, but I think my mind goes in blank mood. But so I was wondering, whether this could be also an opportunity to look for the future in alliances to sharing stories. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And I think we are also hoping to be more accessible in different ways, also in terms of subtitles, etc. And of course, in that sense, means are also limited, unfortunately, which is not an excuse. It's just what we're working with at the moment. But one thing that has come out of like having these, missing each other. I mean, I miss hugging Kubra so much, and Omer and everyone. But that the parties, for example, have in one way also become more accessible, because the club, of course, is exclusive in its own ways. If there is even still a club left, right, after COVID pandemic. And also our art exhibition also includes these questions around disability and ableism. I'm gonna return, thank you so much actually, Evren, for sharing that. As a last word, because people are coming in to dance. Simone, do you want to say something as a last word? Not just you, but everyone.
Because now people want to dance, and now we're going to talk, and everybody's hoping like, oh, I hope they make it short. No, I just want to say thank you for a beautiful conversation. And I hope we have like a good house party tonight. And so yeah, that's my final point. Like, let's not pause the dancing.
Cool. Well, then I'm not going to ask Ari Belire and Nina Köll for a final last word. I'm just going to thank you. I love you all. I hope you can feel it somewhere. Thank you so much for this conversation. And also the 74 people who are here. Thank you, each and every one of you. Let's start the dance. Kubra, did you want to say something? Because you shared some links also, right, of funding.
Well, it passed quicker than I expected this time. Huh? We have.
I cannot hear you. Maybe other people can.
No.
Now, yeah. Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for being with us, for existing, for your solidarity. And we have a fundraising campaign which we started last year for Turkish night workers, I mean DJs and drag kings and queens. And I mean, because we don't have any social insurance, and it's really harder in Turkey to access those. So we have this campaign. I just shared the link for, yeah, you can see in the chat. So if you want to look at, if you want to, support, we'll be glad. And I love you and we love you. Thank you. Let's dance.
Let's dance.
Let's party. Yeah.
I'm here, baby.